Good afternoon and welcome to this very, very special webinar inside the Carer Gateway as part of 2020 National Carers Week. It's really, really fantastic to have you all here. Participants are logging on. That is wonderful. My name is Evan Wallace. I'm the Partnership Coordinator for the Carer Gateway, and it's a really exciting hour that we have ahead. Over the last week, we've been having all sorts of interesting activities and sessions across the state, really. We've had some really great conversations too with some well-known carers and people who have a strong interest in caring. But today is about the ins and outs of caring responsibilities that are driven through the Carer Gateway. So we'll be hearing from one of my team members from the Carer Gateway, another of our great team members who's attached to Uniting, and then also at the same time too from a carer themselves. But before we go through their introductions and any more about today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, and I know that we're joining in from many different parts of the state, so just wanted to acknowledge that and that presence. Before we get into the details, I'd like to introduce the lovely Vic.Tas, who is the manager of the Carer Gateway in Victoria. Vicky, over to you with a bit of an introduction on the Carer Gateway and the role of carers in Victoria.
Thanks, Evan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Vic.Tas. I'm the State Manager of the Carer Gateway in Victoria. I'm from Merri Health, and as you've already seen, Merri Health is delivering the Carer Gateway with 6 other partners across Victoria, including Uniting, Alfred Health, Ballarat Bendigo, Ballarat Health, and Family Care. Carers, as we know, this is Carers Week. It's a time to celebrate carers and to acknowledge all the great work they do. Carers make up about 2.7 million care. There are about 2.7 million unpaid carers in Australia who provide unpaid care and support to family members and friends. It is estimated that carers provide 2.2 billion hours of unpaid care in 2020. Now these are statistics from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and the replacement cost of that care, if it were to be provided by a paid workforce, is estimated to be almost $78 billion, or just under $1.5 billion per week. So that's a huge expenditure that the government can rely on carers to take up that responsibility. The estimated foregone earnings of all unpaid carers is about $15.2 billion, or 0.8% of gross domestic product. So a lot of carers give up their employment or education to become full-time carers to family members or friends, which means that, they're not contributing to the workforce. 60% of all unpaid carers are female, and a figure which increases to 70% when we're considering only primary carers. So this is a week to acknowledge the contribution that carers make. It's an opportunity to celebrate all carers and also to ensure that we raise awareness of carers across Australia. In Victoria, the Carer Gateway can deliver services like carer support planning, carer coaching, counselling, peer support. We also deliver carer-directed packages, and those can assist carers to either re-engage socially or re-engage with employment or education, or also to assist them in their caring role. So we can provide services like Respite, personal care, home care, or assistance with transport. And basically we're there to support carers separate to the care recipient, as care recipients also receive services through either the NDIS or My Aged Care. So our service is focused on the carer. It's about looking at the carer's needs. It's about ensuring that carers are not forgotten and that they prioritise their health and well-being. So as we said before, our hours of operation, we're Monday to Friday, we're a 24-hour service, but if you want to contact us during business hours, our business hours are from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We've actually extended our business hours to 8 p.m. during COVID for Victorian carers. So if you need to speak to someone after 5, you can contact us and one of our intake staff will respond. And hopefully that gives you a bit more time to contact us, because I know that business hours are not always the most convenient time for carers. That's all from me, and I'll hand back to Evan now, who will introduce the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicky. That's a really great introduction. And for everyone who's joined this webinar, just wanted to know that you're in very, very good hands with Vicky as the manager of the Carer Gateway in Victoria. I've been so impressed and really enjoyed working with her and her tireless commitment for making sure that carers across the state receive really, really excellent support and have a positive experience through the Carer Gateway, which is a bit of a segue as to what we're going to be talking around today. It's that journey through the Carer Gateway. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be looking at the Carer Gateway from a range of different perspectives. We're going to be starting off the conversation by looking at intake, registration, high-risk support, and that's going to be delivered by my lovely colleague, Sasha Lufford, who I'll introduce properly in a second. Then we'll look a little bit more at the planning and assessment stage. And in this case, we have Laura Humphries from Uniting, and she's going to be talking about how assessment and planning works from the Gateway's perspective and what carers can expect to experience when they are participating within that assessment and planning process. So with a particular focus on the Kerastar. And then also we're going to finish by hearing about the Carer Gateway from a carer's perspective. And for that part of today's webinar, you'll be hearing from Mish Baker, who's a carer and has a really fascinating perspective on what it was like to engage with the Carer Gateway and a bit about her role as a carer too. So that's where we're going today. For everyone who's joined the webinar, you'll notice that you've been muted and your video is off. So don't worry, you're not going to flash onto the screen at any point of time. So that's absolutely all okay. But what we want are your questions. It's really, really important that you use today as an opportunity to put questions to everyone that you hear from over the next hour. You'll see that there is a Q&A box down the bottom of the Zoom screen. That's the tool that you want to use to put in the questions. And so you'll put them in, we'll read them. After each presentation, I'll ask a couple of my own, but we'll also use yours and really try to get a good conversation going with the team at the Carer Gateway and then with Mish Baker a little bit later on. So that's where we're going today. I hope that all makes sense. Let's get into it. So our first presenter for today is the wonderful Sasha Lufford. I've really enjoyed working with Sasha over the last 4 months. She's a real dynamo when it comes to being responsive to carers across the state. She's often the one that you'll be talking with on the phone when life and times become extra challenging. She's our senior care advisor and plays a tireless role when it comes to connecting carers with the support they need when things are particularly tough. She's got a great background working with carers, with Carers Victoria beforehand, and also been really active within the health space as well too. So it's a real pleasure to have Sasha talk about intake, registration, and high-risk supports on today's webinar. Sasha, over to you, and everyone out there, don't forget to send in your questions through the Q&A box.
Thanks for that fantastic introduction, Evan. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Vicky, as well, for introducing the Carer Gateway. As Evan said, my name's Sasha. I've been working at the Carer Gateway pretty much since its inception in April, and it's been a wonderful experience supporting carers. So I work on the intake team, So we see that as a really important part of the process. As Vicky mentioned, there are thousands and thousands of unpaid family carers across Victoria, and that is such a big role that with so many parts to it, and often carers are left without the support they need, as many services focus on the participant or the person that they support. So we're really excited to be a part of the Carer Gateway and to be able to have a service that focuses solely on the person on the person giving the care in the home. So how do you access all these services that we've been talking about? You've heard some things like accessing support with employment or accessing respite or counselling. How does all that happen? Pretty much you would call us at the Carer Gateway, and as Vicky mentioned, our hours have extended at the moment, so we're open till 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. You would chat to one of our lovely care response officers, and their role is to have a bit of a chat to you and find out what your caring situation is. As Vicky mentioned a little bit earlier, and as you also saw in the brilliant animation at the start, the Carer Gateway supports people who care for family members who are frail aged or have a mental health condition, or a disability or another medical condition. So we'll have a chat with you and establish whether you fit that criteria or whether there's another service that we would need to refer you into. Then what we would do is get your consent to go a little bit further and get your details, and then make sure that we've captured everything about you and your caring situation. The reason that we would do that is to make sure that we can provide a really robust service with all of the information that we need to make sure that the service is safe. We know as much as we can about your caring situation, so that any services we implement are the best suited to you, really. At that intake level with the care response officers, they may also give you some information about other government services. It could be My Aged Care, it could be the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and give you some of those phone numbers if you don't already have them. And they might also link you in with some telephone counselling through the Carer Gateway if that's something that we identify in that initial conversation that you might need. So the Carer Gateway has two sort of counselling services, and one of them is on the phone, so we can give you that number straight away as well. So where I come in, my role is a senior care advisor. We do have a care advisor team. Is if we, in that initial chat with you, we feel like there are some additional layers of complexity, or there are some high risk situations, then we would have a chat with you and put together a bit of a safety plan, because we want to make sure that if something comes up for you and you're not feeling safe for whatever reason, unfortunately some people do find themselves in domestic violence situations or other complex situations, and we do what we can to make sure that we implement a plan for you, make sure that you're safe, and put in any other referrals that need to happen on the spot. So once we've done that, we know that you're safe, we know that everything's stable, we can then also talk to you about whether there's any emergency respite needs at that time. So respite is a word that gets thrown around a little bit. People don't always know what it means, but essentially it's a way that we can help you to get a break. So if there's something that you need really urgently to get a break, we'll do what we can to make sure we can make that happen. So it might be somebody coming to care for your loved one for a couple of hours, if you need to go to a medical appointment or there's a hospitalisation or something like that. And then once that's all done, we've got all your details, then as Vicky mentioned earlier, we do have Carer Gateway partners that we work with, and we'll get all of your details over to them as quickly as possible to make sure that they can do some further follow-up with you. That's all I have for now. Evan, did you have any questions?
Thanks, Sasha. Yeah, that's a really great introduction there. And I do have a couple of questions, and we have received a few questions too. So the first one that comes to mind, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how long it would typically take to be registered on the Carer Gateway, and just talking us through in a bit more detail the different ways that carers can be registered to receive support through the Carer Gateway.
Yeah, sure. So look, it really depends. The length of time depends on the person's personal circumstances. Usually it would take around 15 minutes. It's not too much information that we have to gather. But of course, as I mentioned, there are some circumstances where there may be some additional layers of complexity, or that person on the phone might be quite distressed in the moment. Because often people will call us as well and they don't necessarily know what they need at that moment, and that's totally okay. That's our role, to help you figure out what you need and make sure that we get you to the right spot. So the time can vary depending, and sometimes I can have a bit of a chat with someone on the spot, provide some counselling in that moment, and it might take a little bit longer.
Great. And Sash, you talked about us putting in place safety plans and also the role of emergency respite. That's a really important thing that the Carer Gateway has responsibility for. So just wondering if you could tell people exactly how emergency respite looks in practice, and maybe an example of it.
Yeah, sure thing. So one thing that can happen sometimes is there is a carer caring for a family member, and the family member's not able to be left alone for whatever reason. They might have dementia, or they might have autism and be a young child, and the carer may have a hospitalisation. So that's unplanned. Nobody expects that that's going to happen, and so they might call us up requiring support. So we'd consider that an emergency, Evan, and then we could do what we can to make sure that the person they care for is looked after during that period as much as possible. We will also talk to, if there are other supports involved, like the NDIS or aged care supports, we will also engage those services and see if we can work together.
Thanks, Sash. And we've had a question that's come through from Sally, and Sally has asked, how do we support carers where English might not be their first language, or there could be some real communication challenges when it comes to understanding the carer's needs?
Yeah, great question, Sally. So it's really important that we support everyone in the community, and we do have interpreters that we work with. So if you can let us know that you need an interpreter, enough information just to know the language and the phone number, then we can call you back with an interpreter. That's absolutely no problem at all.
And this question has come through from Edward. Edward is asking, how does the Carer Gateway work specifically with residential aged care centres when it comes to organising supports? He's a little bit confused about the link between the two.
Yeah, okay, that's another really good question. So what happens is that once someone's over 65 and they've had an aged care assessment, then they're eligible to access respite in an aged care facility. Sometimes what happens is that when there's an emergency situation, the carer may not have time to arrange that, or there may be other factors that are influencing the planning of that. And so what the Carer Gateway can do is we can help to fund that respite stay, some of that respite stay at the very least, the first 2 weeks. And depending on the situation, we can liaise or help find that respite place too, because if the care has been hospitalised, it's going to be quite hard for them to find that place. Does that answer the question, or did you need some further detail?
I think there'll be a way for the questioners to be able to follow up at the with their questions that we'll talk through at the end. But another question that's come through from Rashminda Singh. Rashminda says that I live a long way out of Melbourne, about 3-4 hours, and live in a relatively remote part of the state. Will I still get support if I need it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Carer Gateway is a statewide service, and we have our Carer Gateway partners that cover every little bit of Victoria. So we're absolutely here to support anyone from anywhere in the state.
And this one's come through from an anonymous attendee. Do we help carers get onto the carer payment and also the carer allowance?
So the carer payment and the carer allowance are run by Centrelink, so that isn't anything to do with our service. However, if you do need specific support with that, it might be something that you can talk to with the assessment and planning officers, and Laura can maybe speak to this a little bit more, and we can certainly give you details of how to contact centre link, which number to call, and I do often give out details for Social Security Rights Victoria as well if people are having challenges, so we can make sure that we link people in with any specific services they need support with.
And last question that's come in is from Helen. Helen said, Sasha, it sounds as though you're really, really passionate about what you're doing. This is awesome to hear. What do you find the most challenging parts of your job?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think probably the hardest bit is that I never get to see anyone in person. Everything's done over the phone, so sometimes I don't know what people look like, but I have been working in carer services now for close to 7 years, so I definitely really enjoy it, and I really like being able to support people who may not otherwise reach out for help because they're spending so much time caring for someone at home. So it's just really lovely to be able to have those conversations with people. But yeah, it's a good question.
Oh, I think that's a good answer. Sasha, thank you so much for answering those questions. I'm sure everyone who put them through is really grateful to hear those reflections, and for also guiding us through intake, registration, and a bit about your role when it comes to supporting carers when they are doing it particularly tough and more challenging times emerge. So, Sasha, on behalf of everyone at the Carer Gateway, thanks for your hard work and thanks for your participation today. And look, are there any questions that come up that we want to answer? Feel free to join in on that as well. Might need to throw to you at a time, but yeah, Sasha's still here if people want to keep using that Q&A box. So thanks so much, Sasha. And now it's time to introduce our next presenter. As Vicky and Sasha have mentioned, the Carer Gateway is driven by a good number of different health and community services based across Victoria. Alfred, Ballarat, Bendigo, Barwon, Carers Victoria, Family Care, Merri Carer Services, and Uniting. And depending on where you live will depend on which organisation you connect with when it comes to assessment and planning through the Carer Gateway. Once that registration and intake process has taken place, that Sasha's talked about. So our next presenter is someone who's on the front line of that assessment and planning experience. It's a real delight to have Laura Humphries from Uniting Vic.Tas. Laura's a assessment and planning officer for Uniting and is working tirelessly to make sure that carers are assessed appropriately and get the support that they need. And I know there's a few questions that have come through on what types of supports can be funded and organised through the Carer Gateway, and that's something that we'll definitely come to a little bit with the questions when we talk with Laura, so keep those Q&A questions coming through. But without any further delay, Laura, it's good to have you here, and I'm really interested to hearing about planning and assessment through the Carer Gateway and also the role of the Kerastar. Laura, over to you.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name's Laura. So I'm an assessment and planning officer. I work for Uniting. So Uniting cover the Eastern Metro region of Melbourne. We also cover Gippsland in East Victoria, also Goulburn Northeast. So we cover a really large part of the state. We have quite a big team. We have staff members that work in Melbourne. They work in the regional areas, so they have real knowledge of what's going on in the areas where they live. So in terms of my role and how the process works, basically, we will be assigned a referral from intake, which is basically a summary of the client's situation. So they'll pass on all the details that they've collected, give us a really good snapshot of what's going on for the client. So we'll be able to have that real knowledge before we speak to them. So then we'll call them, we'll introduce ourselves, we'll arrange a time so that we can go through an assessment with them over the phone. We're very mindful that carers have a really busy schedule, so we try and work with them to find a good time for them where they'll really have time to sit with us and go through the assessment as best as possible. So the Kerastar assessment is a really great holistic tool that was designed in collaboration with carers. It's an assessment that focuses solely on the carer and their needs and everything that's going on for them at the moment. So it looks at 7 different areas of the carer's life. It looks at the carer's health. It looks at the caring role. It looks at how they're managing at home. It looks at whether they're getting enough time for themselves, enough downtime. It looks at how they're feeling. It also looks at their work situation and their financial situation. And it's basically just a really great free-flowing conversation around those areas. So carers are able to disclose as much information, as little information as they like, but if they want to, they can talk to us as deeply as they want to. And a lot of carers actually feel that this is a great opportunity for them to talk about these types of things that are going on for them. Often they may not have had the chance to really have this conversation with another person before. We've actually had some really great feedback that carers really enjoy the assessment process. They really enjoy delving into these topics and getting a chance to talk about how they're feeling from their perspective. So while we're having this conversation, the assessment and planning officer will work with you to determine on a rating scale how you are going at this point in time. And this is in accordance with the journey of change. So we look at how you're going. We use this as a way of identifying which of these 7 areas maybe we might want to focus on, prioritize which would be most helpful in terms of arranging support for you. In terms of what carers can access through the Carer Gateway, honestly, the answer is so broad. There are a lot of different types of things that we can do to help you. There's not necessarily a clear-cut answer, but in general, what our main focus is to help you as a carer and to relieve stress for you. So, for example, if we go through the assessment and we determine that one of the areas that you need help with is managing at home, and we identify that that's something that would help you in your caring role, then we might be able to implement some short-term home care to support you, especially while maybe other things are going on. If you've got challenges that have come up and you need extra help during that time, we're here to help you. But the great thing about the Carer Gateway is we can also help you to access ongoing services as well relating to managing at home. So we will help with the process of linking you to other ongoing supports to make sure that you have all the support that you're entitled to and to make sure you're feeling supported in your caring role. But back to types of support that are available. Just to give you a couple of examples, if we work out that something that you're struggling with is how you're feeling and your emotional well-being, we can link you with a counsellor. And as Sasha mentioned, there's 2 different types of counselling, and there's lots of ways that we can work with you to make sure that you're getting adequate counselling. We can, if you are having issues with your caring role, and about feeling supported, again, we can link you with ongoing support services, or we can help you through facilitated carer coaching modules, which are really designed to help you feel supported and learn as much as you can about your caring role. If you're struggling with time for yourself, we can link you with things like Respite. We can provide you with a break. Respite is a really multifaceted topic, and there's lots of different ways that we can help you with Respite. If you're struggling with financial issues, we can provide advice on financial support services or help you navigate Centrelink. or we can sometimes assist with vouchers for people that need assistance. If you're struggling with things relating to work, we can also provide resources in helping you to negotiate a better arrangement with your employer or link you with services that will help you. There are a lot of different things that people could access through the Carer Gateway. I could go on and on about it, but the main thing to take away from this is the assessment and planning process is a really great way of identifying how we can help you through the Carer Gateway, and we will endeavour to help you as best as we can. And I know there will be times where certain things that carers need we won't be able to help with, but we will do our best to link you with people that can, and we will do our best to ensure that you have all the support that you need. Evan, would you like me to explain?
No, Laura, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for that really great insight and exploration of assessment and planning through the Carer Gateway. I really appreciate that, and I know that our viewers are appreciating that as well, based on the questions that are coming through too. So that's excellent. I know one question that I think a few carers might be asking is, how long would it normally take for the Kerastar to be completed?
That's a really great question. I would say on average, the Kerastar takes about an hour. So that may seem like a large chunk of time to a lot of people. For some people, we can condense that. We can also break it up into several phone calls. We will work with you to make sure that you are allotting the time to this assessment to make sure that you're gaining access to all the supports that are available, but also being mindful that you may not have that much time to give up at once. And we're very happy to work with you to make sure that's done appropriately.
Oh, I think that's going to be good news for everyone to hear. We had a lot of questions and a lot of comments as well too, with people reflecting on the theme of financial hardship. And we know from Vicky's introduction that carers are a group within the community who do experience that financial hardship. And I'm just wondering, when we identify using the Kerastar, that a carer is experiencing financial hardship and that's really impacting their role as a carer, just how you've responded to that, Laura, from your role.
Thanks, Evan. So yes, you're right. That is a huge issue facing carers. We would love to be able to solve all carers' financial issues. Obviously, that's not something we can always do, but we can always help out and link you with other services. For example, if carers are having financial struggles due to having to drive their care recipient to a lot of appointments, or going to visit their care recipient who lives a long way away, we can provide vouchers to help them in paying for their petrol. If they're having costs associated with cost at the supermarket or trying to keep up with bills, we can provide them with vouchers for the supermarket to try and alleviate some financial stress. If they're unsure of how to apply for the carer's allowance, then we can provide them with the information and the phone numbers of how they can access that. If they're having trouble managing their finances, we can put them towards other services that can help them, such as a financial counsellor or other types of services. We really do our best to work with carers and make sure that they have all the knowledge that they need to put them in the best position that they can be in.
Oh, I think that's super, really super. And it answers another question that came through in terms of what sort of vouchers are available too. So thanks for expanding on that one. Another question that's come through, and this one's come through from Kath. Can you expand on what respite options are available through the Carer Gateway?
Yep, absolutely. So we know that carers have such different needs, and obviously their care recipients have different requirements as well. So mainly what we do is either in-home respite, where we'll arrange an experienced carer to come in and spend some time with the care recipient, to either allow the carer to go out of the home and have a break, or even just to spend some time in the home alone in their own room, just to have some time to themselves. And we really endeavour to match the care recipient with a support worker who will be able to meet their needs adequately and make sure that they are safe and looked after while the carer is taking a break. The other types of things that we can help with is facility-based respite. So we can provide information on how to admit the care recipient to a respite facility. So we can provide information regarding My Aged Care and getting access to the subsidised rates, information on different facilities. We can also help with the funding for the respite when applicable. There are restrictions to the funding of the Carer Gateway, and obviously we do our best, but just to keep in mind that can make a really big difference. I think the main thing that we do in terms of respite is also helping people to match them with the ongoing services that mean that they're not without respite when the Carer Gateway funding has ended or ceased, to make sure that they're still being supported after the Carer Gateway can no longer assist.
Very good. And this question's come through from Giuseppe. It's a bit more of a general question, but hoping you might be able to answer it, Laura. How long can I get support for, is the question.
That's a great question. So at the moment, most carer-directed packages or carer support planning periods will go for approximately 6 months. That's up to interpretation. It can be up to 12 months. And that will change probably due to COVID provisions. The government has made some exemptions for us to provide more support to people in a shorter period of time. So at the moment, we're looking at about approximately 6 months. So we do work within a budget when we're talking about implementing support. So it really depends on the needs of the carer and what they are after as to how long the funding side of things will typically last. But the important thing to note is that the carer support planning assessment officer can actually work with the carer for that whole time. Even when the funding may have been exhausted, we're still there as a support person in that person's life. We're still there to turn to if they need advice, or something's come up, or they need additional help, or they actually just want someone to talk to. We will still be there for them during that time.
That's fantastic. And then just one last question. This one's come through from Sadiq. Sadiq says, I'm 16 and I'm a carer for my mum, and I'm worried about how I'm going to balance everything with my last year of school next year. Is there support for me?
Yeah, another great question. So young carers are sort of a target group that the government has identified requiring extra assistance. So when it comes to young carers, so any young carers up to the age of 25, we can also support them in their educational needs, whether that be funding for equipment relating to their education, or whether it be tutoring sometimes, or linking them with other services. There is that extra support, especially for young carers.
Oh, wonderful. I think that's that's really, really good news for all the young carers out there, and for Sadiq, who's been kind enough to take time out of his day to join in on today's webinar. And I should just say that as well to everyone who has joined the webinar. Thank you again for joining us. We're really enjoying the questions that are coming through, and Laura, you did a great job in answering those ones for your session there. So it's really wonderful that we had such an insight into assessment and planning, and a bit of an overview as to what sort of support people can receive, and really just coming back to knowing that it's a process that works hand in glove with both the organisation that's attached to planning, but then also the carer themselves. That it's it's a two-way process, and it's a lot of teamwork, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. So the main thing that we would like to achieve through the Carer Gateway and the assessment and planning process is actually helping the carer to feel confident in their own abilities, to realise that it's okay to ask for support and they're entitled to that support, and we are here to help them every step of the way.
Laura, thank you so much for your presentation, and stay on the conversation as well too, in case there's any more questions that pop up. And that's a great sort of transition point to really go into the Carer Gateway from the perspective of a carer. I'm really pleased to introduce Mish Baker. Mish is a single parent and full-time carer for her 5 children, and they all have various diagnoses. She herself has a diagnosis of level 2 autism. She's a passionate advocate for mental health and disability support, and she's a really talented artist, and a great voice for carers as well too. Mish, wonderful that you're there. Really interested to hear about what your experiences have been like.
Thank you, Evan. I've been a carer for 25 years now. It's certainly been a challenging pathway, and I have to say the Carer Gateway's made a huge difference for me this year. In the past, I experienced being shuffled from agency to agency because they'd either say, no, you have a disability, so we don't provide for you, or they'd say, no, you're a carer, so we don't provide for you. It was either disability-specific support or carer-specific support. So when you cross both those boundaries, people didn't know what to do with you. This year has been a really difficult year for us. As well as having autism, I'm also highly immunocompromised. So I have 3 children who still live at home and 2 who live out of home. And my kids who live at home and I have been in lockdown for 8 months because of the risks that come with COVID. For me, a standard cold gives me pneumonia. So we've had to be really strict with our lockdown experience. 3 months ago, my mother had a stroke and passed away unexpectedly, and she lived up in Wodonga, but she passed away in Albury. So she was taken to hospital in Albury, and I wasn't allowed to cross the border to attend the funeral, to say goodbye. Mum was buried in Wodonga, so I could at least be there for the burial this side of the Victoria-New South Wales border, but not being able to physically go see my mum or physically attend the funeral was incredibly difficult for me and hit me really hard. And that in turn had a huge impact on me with my caring role. So I reached out to the Carer Gateway, and I honestly, from past experience with other agencies, I thought it would be complicated and stressful, but it was a really straightforward and supportive and understanding environment right from the first phone call. So they got me linked in with supports here at home, as well as with the counsellor. The counselling, the 6 sessions that I've had through there, I've got 1 session left, and they have been phenomenal. They help me not only process how to juggle things with my caring role and with self-care, they also really help me to work out how to cope with the loss of my mum. And one suggestion that came about just through talking about the circumstance was creating my own little basically a memorial for my mum that my kids and I could participate in ourselves here at home. So we actually planted a what's called a fruit salad tree. It's a tree that grows oranges, lemons and limes on the one tree. And we planted that as a memorial for my mum. The day after we planted it, I was talking to one of my sisters and found out that my mum, when my dad passed away, had actually planted the same tree for my dad, and I didn't know that. So that's been a massive comfort to me and enabled me to feel that closure and that connection with my mum and with the loss of her, and to deal with things a lot better. Because of being in lockdown for so long and not being able to have people come in the home, we weren't able to have a cleaner come in or support workers because of the risk for me. So Laura has been fantastic in working out different ways to provide me with support. So one of the things they did was they arranged a voucher for a meal company, and we've had some meals delivered to take the pressure off me with cooking and things, and that's been a massive help because I've been able to put more attention into the day-to-day needs without worrying about how am I going to have the energy to cook at the end of the day with everything going on with all my kids. As well as that, they also provided funding to assist me with accessing a new laptop. The computer I've been working on is 15 years old, so it's quite the dinosaur and makes it very difficult to keep up with things. My new laptop's due to arrive this week, and I'm very excited about it, about actually having decent connectivity to being able to keep up with emails and appointments and all those things much more easily. And that will make a big difference in my life in being able to access everything we need to do for the kids' appointments, and especially with everything being on telehealth, not being able to do that via a computer makes it very difficult when you're trying to look at things on a tiny phone screen and share paperwork with OTs and speech therapists and all the other things. So it will really, really help with that. Yeah, I think that covers everything.
I'm really, really grateful, Mish, for you sharing your experiences, and I'm sorry that it's been such a hard year for you as well too, and that's just something also that a lot of attendees who have joined us on today's webinar also wanted to pass on as well too. A lot of support, a lot of empathy, and a lot of love that's coming through from the different participants on today's webinar who might be able to relate a little bit from some of their experience as well this year too. So just first of all, before I ask any questions, Mish, just wanted to express gratefulness for you sharing that, and then also and to share that sympathy from the behalf of the Carer Gateway, and for all of the team, and for everyone who's joined us on the webinar.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
One question that I'd like to ask you, Mish, is what advice would you give to carers who have not yet accessed support or are reluctant to access support?
I completely understand feeling reluctant to access support. In society, we're often taught that there's always someone worse off than us. So, oh no, we shouldn't go do that because someone else will need it more than me. And in our caring roles, we are all worthy of support, and we all deserve to have a break and deserve to receive support just as we give to our loved ones who we care for. The Carer Gateway is the most streamlined process and the most carer-focused process I've experienced in 2 decades. The caring and empathy that comes through, and the way they work really hard to try to adapt supports to our individual needs and circumstances really can make a difference in your life. And I would honestly encourage all of you to get in contact, access those supports, and just enable yourself to be gifted with being able to have life made just that little bit easier for you. And in taking care of yourself and accessing supports for you, you're taking better care of your loved ones, because by supporting and caring for ourselves, it enables us not to burn out and to take better care of those we care for.
That's a really, really good constructive piece of advice. Mish, thank you for sharing that. Another question that I'm wanting to ask you as well, what do you do to look after your own health? So you talked about burning out and you talked about, some of the stresses, but just wondering if you could explore a little bit more what you do to keep yourself as healthy as possible, albeit in these really, really challenging times.
Taking care of ourselves can be extremely challenging, even without all the things that have come with COVID and the difficulties this year. I am an avid reader, so I make sure I set time aside every night to read one of my books that I enjoy. When I'm unable to hold a book because I actually have arthritis in my hands, I use audiobooks, and sometimes it's nice to just lie in the dark for half an hour or so before I go to sleep and just listen to a story being read to me. Coffee is one of my sanity savers, and we have a very small courtyard out the back, but making myself a coffee and sitting outside for 5 minutes to drink my coffee is really lovely. I try to access my garden, do a little bit of gardening when I can. And in the past, I've used my art to help myself cope. As I said, with my computer being so old, I'm a digital artist, so that's been something I haven't accessed for a while. So I'm super excited to be able to get Photoshop up and running and start creating my artworks again, because that really does help me cope a lot.
Coffee, books, art, gardening, great combination. And I like the idea of audiobooks. I've been listening to the Lord of the Rings audiobooks lately. I've never quite really managed to find the patience to really sit through and read them all, but it's been good listening to it on audiobooks as well too. Mish, that sounds like a good combination of things that you have there. One question that's come through and really be interested to hear your perspectives, Mish, is after supports that you've received this year from the Carer Gateway, are you feeling more optimistic about next year?
Yeah, I definitely am. Even though we haven't been able to have someone come in the house to relieve, the pressure of trying to juggle housework and caring and all of those things. As I said, those frozen meals coming in, taking the dinner time routine off my plate for the most part. It's given me a little bit more time to just renew myself, focus on trying to take care of my own energy reserves. And it's definitely eased the pressure that I was feeling and the exhaustion. I've started sleeping better now, which is making a difference for me also, because I'm a chronically bad sleeper a lot of the time. I'm too used to needing one ear open for if one of the kids needed me or something. But I think next year's going to be much, much better, and accessing Carer Gateway's made a world of difference for me.
I'm really, really happy to hear it. Mish, thank you so much for sharing your insights and reflections there. I'm just keen, I know that we're very close to the end of today's sessions, just to quickly sort of bring in our other presenters from today too for some closing words. Mish, seeing that you told us about your work with Laura, I'm just curious, Laura, from your perspective, how's it been working with Mish?
Great question, Evan. So I will tell you the best part about my job is the fact that I get to be introduced to all these fascinating people who have these really great stories to tell. I work with so many different carers, like I've met so many different types of people from this program. But the thing that I love about Mish is the fact that even though she's had a terrible year. She's had a lot going on. She's, you know, struggling, but honestly, her strength is admirational. It makes me feel really good to work with people like that who are really positive and they're, well, so selfless like Mish is, but it makes my day to be able to provide support to people like Mish who genuinely need the help.
Oh, I think that's really, really, really great to hear. Mish, how does that make you feel?
It feels good. You know, we can't always be positive. It's hard. There are times where all you can see is bleakness, and that's understandable. And that's, I think, at times a natural part of what comes with having the pressure of caring on you. But that's okay. In those times, that's where the supports like the counselling and that I've accessed really make a difference. I couldn't think straight when I first contacted them. I was just lost in my own grief, and it's made a big difference.
Oh, fantastic, Mish. Thank you for being here today, and thank you to Laura as well. Sasha, just hoping that you might be able to give a piece of advice to the carers who are out there, and any final reflections after hearing that conversation from Mish and also from Laura as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Evan. So I thank you so much, Mish. Really appreciate your time, your energy, your honesty. It's really fantastic to listen to your story. And I think I'd just like to follow on from what you said, is that if people are feeling unsure about getting in touch, or you're not sure what you need, that's totally fine. Please still do call, and we'll help you. So really look forward to chatting to you, if it's me or if it's one of our other team members. And also, just to echo Evan as well, thank you for coming along today. It's great that people have been able to make the time.
Thank you, Sasha. On behalf of everyone at the Carer Gateway, first of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Sasha, to Mish, to Laura, to Vicky for being here today and for providing their input and insights. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and for your openness as well, and for making this a really sort of hopeful session at the end stages of Carers Week. For all of the carers out there, if you're looking to access support through the Gateway, the number to call is 1-800-422-737. That's 1-800-422-737. There's also more information on the Carer Gateway on the Carer Gateway website, carergateway.gov.au. That's carergateway.gov.au. And also via the Merri Health website too, merrihealth.org.au. Lots of avenues to be able to connect with the team at the Carer Gateway, to access information and to access support. Thank you so much to everyone who's stayed with us throughout today's webinar. I'm glad the technology held up. I know that in various meetings, that's not always the case. So we've survived an hour, and for that, that's also something to be grateful about too. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you at the next Carer Gateway event. All the best.